On the 1st of January, 3001, a family of lowly plantation workers on the combine world of Kuzuu was blessed with the birth of a daughter. As a gifted student, she soon caught the attention of the Internal Security Force and the Order of Five Pillars. And with such support, it was made possible for her to enroll at the University of Dieron. The petite, slender, and myopic woman was destined to become a member of the Combine's security apparatus. Yet this never came to be. Shocked by the killing of a fellow student and the intense questioning she endured at the hands of the ISF, she instead went to the local HPG station and joined ComStar. She would not be a simple part of a Combine. Myndo Waterly was on her way to become one of the most important figures of the 31st century. Her ascent to power was a tumultuous and controversial period in the history of ComStar. Within 10 years, during the end of the Third Succession War, Waterly climbed the ranks from Adept on Dieron to Advocate Presenter of the First Circuit, and then Primus. Before that, she had already faced charges of treason, the danger of excommunication, and she had also led the call to interdict House Davian and marshaled the use of ComStar troops in an attack on the capital world of one of the great houses. Quite an achievement for someone who was not yet Primus. Altogether, Waterly was an advocate for the most aggressive elements of ComStar, promoting the use of force to fulfill the prophecies of Blake. Historians agree that the First Circuit supported her appointment to the primacy because most of its members feared standing against her after witnessing the fall of Julian Tiepolo. This shift in approach to dealing with the inner sphere was neither wrong nor inherently evil. Primus Waterly saw the gradual downslide of ComStar under Primus Tiepolo. Waterly believed that the ComStar Guards and Militia, renamed the ComGuards under her leadership, would save the word of Blake. In accordance with her offensive approach, she quickly replaced Presenter Rom Jalath with the ultra-radical Nicholas Kuzuu, only 3 days into her primacy. In November 3029, as the Fourth Succession War drew to a close, Waterly initiated discussions with the Federated Sons concerning the interdiction. Using the ComStar attack on Sana as an example of a need for better protection for ComStar's HPGs, she convinced Hansa Davian that his forces were inadequate and suggested placing ComStar troops and battle mechs within the ComStar compounds on each world in his empire. Despite his reluctance, Prince Davian agreed, and by December the interdiction was lifted. For the first time, the House Lords could confirm the existence of ComStar battlemech forces, though the full extent of their strength would remain unknown for some years. Deploying ComGuard forces to each world of a new Federated Commonwealth required significant time and resources. Until Waterly negotiated the deal with Davian, the ComStar Guards had always been under the direct command of a Primus. Waterly found herself at the head of a logistical and administrative nightmare. Although ComStar had a battle-ready mech force since 3005, they had little experience in moving troops on a large scale or supporting them. Deploying troops to each HPG compound and setting up a costly supply system to support them took more than 2 years and required extensive outside help. For this reason, the Primus recruited several mercenary leaders as consultants to organize a vast operation, but as a result, these long-term contractors eventually learned that the largest military force in the inner sphere was hidden on Terra. The secrecy around ComStar started to crack. Primus Waterly held a different belief than her predecessor. She thought that dividing the inner sphere houses into two armed camps would be dangerous. Instead, she wanted to keep the inner sphere splintered and at each other's throat. To achieve her goal, she offered Operation Rosebud. Centerpiece for this was the Rasalhague district. This was a piece of a Draconis Combine at the border region to the Lyran Commonwealth. A rather unhappy destiny, because it had turned into a constant war zone, where raids and counter-raids inflicted casualties on the population. Furthermore, the original Scandinavian inhabitants of the old Principality of Rasalhague were unwilling to submit under the foreign and strange customs of a Draconis Combine. Several uprisings and riots had shaped the last 700 years of history. During the Fourth Succession War, many Rasalhagians greeted the Lyran Commonwealth troops as liberators and helped them to capture many Rasalhague systems before the behavior of the Lyran Command soured this relation also. Waterly was eager to use this for ComStar's advantage. Operation Rosebud called for ComStar to sponsor movement within the Rasalhague worlds to win the independence from the Draconis Combine. The new Rasalhague state would act as a buffer between the Draconis Combine and the Federated Commonwealth, allowing the Combine to relocate its troops, currently policing Rasalhague, to the border of the Federated Suns. In addition, the Primus also hoped to create enough unrest in Sky for it to create its own independence movement and physically separate the Federated Suns and Lyran Commonwealth again. In September 3030, Primus Waterly secretly met with Conray Theodore Kurita to lay the groundwork for the first phase of Rosebud. ComStar would provide the Draconis Combine with intelligence information on the Federated Commonwealth and with battle max from its undisclosed sources to replenish those lost during the Fourth Succession War. In return, the Combine would allow ComStar to post ComGuard troops at all of its HPG compounds and would officially recognize the formation of a free Rasalhague Republic. However, when Waterly returned to Terra, she faced the First Circuit that was uneasy with the terms she had negotiated. To quell the debate, she assured the Council that any battle mech given to the Combine would be stripped of any lost stack devices. In 3034, Aus Kurita recognized the Free Rasalhague Republic, giving up most of the worlds it had promised to ComStar. The Lyran Commonwealth equally had to surrender a considerable number of worlds won during the Fourth Succession War to the Republic, damaging the relationship between the Commonwealth and the Republic. Shortly after, both the Combine and ComStar began to question their earlier agreement. The Combine withheld several key worlds from the Free Rasalhague Republic, keeping them in the Alshine district, and ComStar only provided stripped-down battlemechs to the DCMS, rather than the original Star League equipment Aus Kurita believed Waterly had promised. Sky was ablaze with demonstrations, but neither the Draconis Combine nor ComStar believed that a large-scale revolt against the Steiner-Davian Union was likely. The tensions between the Combine and ComStar reached their peak in the summer of 3034, when the Primus traveled to Dieron to meet with Theodore Kurita in the Dragon's Roost command post, hidden in the Tatsuyama Mountains. The meeting was cordial, but tense, with both sides claiming that the other had failed to uphold their end of the pact. Theodore Kurita insisted that he was unable to concede any other world to the New Republic, and Primus Waterly conceded that ComStar would not interdict the Combine for renouncing its agreement. To conclude Operation Rosebud, Kurita presented a unique gift to Primus Waterly, a former general he had captured some years ago. The Conray knew that despite ComStar's vast military machine, the troops lacked practical military experience or leadership other than that of the contracted mercenaries. By presenting this prisoner to Waterly, he gave the ComGuards a new path filled with endless possibilities. The new general would be known under the name Anastasius Focht. Primus Waterly made him her new presenter Rom, replacing presenter Kuzuu because of his gross incompetence during the recent dealings with the Draconis Combine, even though the Primus handled all the negotiations directly. Despite the sensitive nature of Focht's posting, it was approved with little debate by the First Circuit. Many historians and witnesses believe that the Primus used political favors to prevent controversy over Focht's appointment. None knew his background or opinions, and most assumed him to be simply one of the Primus' followers. To tie everything together and get the most benefits out of Operation Rosebud, the Primus turned her attention to Sky. In meetings with Ryan Steiner, leader of the Sky Independence Movement, Primus Waterly agreed to provide favorite user status to Ryan and his followers in exchange for an incident. In 3041, forces loyal to Ryan Steiner car-bombed the outer perimeter wall of Ko HPG compound, killing 5 acolytes and 2 adepts while seriously wounding the presenter of the station. Using this attack as a pretext, Primus Waterly demanded that Archon Melissa Steiner allowed her to post ComStar guards in the Commonwealth to protect the HPG stations. A full interdiction would be the result of a refusal. The Archon agreed, despite her personal resentment of the Primus and her demands. After she returned to Terra, Myndo Waterly claimed that Operation Rosebud was a success, but her detractors in the First Circuit pronounced it a failure. For them, too few of its goals were met. However, Waterly solidified her hold on the First Circuit by appointing Gardner Reese as the presenter of Rasalhague and as a new advocate member of the First Circuit. Reese had been a low-level adept in the Order before Waterly promoted him, but he was a devout follower of her extreme views and would tip the balance of the First Circuit's control in her favor. In the fall of 3034, agents working for the MIIO reported that House Kurita had access to sensitive information that could only have come from ComStar. This led Prince Hansa Davian to initiate Operation Flush, a secret war between MIIO and ROM, aimed at exposing ComStar's suspected duplicity and ridding the Federated Commonwealth of all ROM agents. Also, Prince Davian believed that if he could prove that ComStar was not adhering to its claims of pacifism, he would rid the Federated Commonwealth of its current garrisons of ComStar forces. Though clandestine, Operation Flush was a bloody war. In December of 3034, MIIO operatives rounded up dozens of suspected ROM agents in sweeps on 36 worlds. Flush's opening shot Though many of these civilians had no ties whatsoever to the Order, Hans Davian ordered them interrogated and interned. Presenter Focht's response to Operation Flush was to wage a war of confusion against the Federated Commonwealth. Misinformation and false leaks planted by agents still operating in the FedCom led MIIO to believe that several key administrators and statespersons in the government were ROM agents. MIIO's response, after months of following the red herrings, was to begin a systematic assassination campaign against all suspected ROM agents who may have evaded the initial dragnet. Responding to a proposal by Primus Waterly, the First Circuit passed the Readjustment Act of 3035. This act reformed the ComGuards and ROM, creating the position of Precentor Marshal. The Precentor ROM post still existed, reporting now directly to the Precentor Marshal, who in turn reported to the Primus and First Circuit. Primus Waterly appointed Anastasius Focht as a first Precentor Marshal of the ComGuards. The new Precentor ROM was Charles Seneca, formerly of the Free Worlds League. Primus Waterly's reorganization placed Focht in direct charge of the ComGuards, a position in which she felt his unique skills would be put to the best use. On the other hand, Primus Waterly allowed Seneca to step up operation against the MIIO by using ROM as an assassination tool, resulting in a deadly game of cat and mouse between agents of both agencies, using firebombing, snipers, and booby traps. By 3044, when Prince Hans Davian decided to end Operation Flush, some 420 agents had died. The Primus claimed it was a ComStar victory, while the Federated Commonwealth claimed to have purged ROM from within its borders. In other places, things were going better for ComStar. Thomas Merrick, rise to power in the Free Worlds League, was greatly aided by Primus Waterly's new vision for ComStar. When Thomas was injured in 3035, a ROM agent named Philip Taglibio helped him to escape from medical treatment. ComStar diverted a series of jump ships to transport Thomas to Terra. While at the Hilton Head medical facility, he met regularly with the Primus and was given full access to all transmissions from the Free Worlds League. This was an unprecedented move on the part of Primus Waterly, who saw Thomas Merrick as an opportunity to forge ties with one of the inner sphere houses like never before. After playing on Merrick's background with ComStar, the Primus had agreed to provide him with information on the condition that he would allow Precentor Marshal Focht to post ComGuards in the Free Worlds League when he assumed the Captain Generalcy. By the spring of 3040, Thomas Merrick solidified his powers in the Free Worlds League by capturing Dame Catherine Humphreys, ending Endurian's most recent rebellion. It was a ROM report smuggled to Thomas by Precentor Atreus on orders of the Primus that made Humphreys' capture possible. Seeking to expand her ComGuards posting to really every house, Primus Waterly visits the Compellent Confederation in 3038. During a state meeting with Chancellor Romano Yao, tensions between ComStar and the House became apparent. When Primus Waterly announced an increase of 25% in transmission rates for the Confederation, citing upgrade costs to the HBG network as the cause. Angered by the announcement, Chancellor Liao accused ComStar of exploiting her nation's already weakened economy. So, In an effort to compromise, the Primus proposed that ComStar maintain the current transmission rates for 25 years in exchange for the Capel Confederation permitting ComStar to station Battletech forces at its HPG compounds. Although Romano was initially resistant to the idea, she and Primus Waterly signed a pact within 6 months, allowing the ComGuards to garrison troops in the Confederation. But later, Chancellor Liao began to suspect that presenter Tie of Xi'an was a spy, selling state secrets to Liao's dreaded enemy, the Federated Commonwealth. The idea was mainly based on false data about presenter Tie's connections and relationship with Tormana Liao, provided by Maskarovka agents. The Chancellor twice demanded that Primus Waterly replace the presenter, and when her requests went unheeded, she took matters in her own hands. In 3041, Maskarovka agents attempted to assassinate presenter Tie during a motorcade tour of the capital. The presenter was wounded, but she managed to escape. The assassins were never caught, but it was discovered that they were operating on direct orders from Chancellor Liao. The Chancellor also threatened to revoke her agreement with ComStar, saying she would remove the ComGuards from her empire, with force if necessary. Waterly courteously reminded her that assassinations and threats would force ComStar to declare an interdiction of a complete confederation. This stalemate continued for 3 weeks. Discussions with presenter Marshal Focht convinced Primus Waterly that Romano Liao's mental state and her previous record for violent actions made resistance by ComStar futile. The presenter Marshal further contended that the ComGuards could win if forced to fight the Capel military, but they would not be able to maintain control of the Confederation while defending all their other HPG sites. Though faced with a difficult situation, Primus Waterly was able to turn it to her own advantage. Rather than heading into a military confrontation with the Confederation, she opted to replace Tie with adept Jin Li as presenter Xi'an. The Primus cited her concern for Tie following the former presenter's recent accident as a pretext for making the change. Romano Liao was delighted with a change of personnel, especially since the Li family was a long-honored ally of House Liao, and Romano personally knew and trusted Yen Li. However, Primus Waterly considered this a victory for ComStar, as Yen Li was actually a long-time ROM operative, posing as an adept. For more than a decade, Li had been feeding ComStar informations about the inner circle of the Capel Confederation, a mission that continued long after promotion to presenter. As we can see, thanks to Myndo Waterly's workings, every one of the successor states now had a garrison of ComGuards stationed within their own borders. After more than 2 centuries in the shadows, using manipulation and trickery, ComStar had finally the ability to face their opponents head-on. The War of 3039. ComStar was aware of the looming War of 3039 well before it broke out. Primus Waterly understood the danger of House Davian's power to ComStar, and intercepted military information from the Federated Suns proved their war preparations. This information was then passed on to the Draconis Combine as per their agreement with Theodore Kurita. In monitoring this information, however, both the Primus and ROM were puzzled by how few messages were sent via the HPG network. ROM postulated that either the Federated Commonwealth was using jump ship command circuits to relay information, or else they had come up with another way of transmitting their messages. Well, despite this, the initial success of the Federated Commonwealth's offensive into the Combine was short-lived, as the Conray repelled most of the Steiner-Davian forces with the help of refitted ComStar battlemechs. One of the most sweeping changes that occurred the following decade was the reorganization of the ComGuards under Precentor Marshal Focht. While the ComGuards divisions followed the same essential organization as the Federated Commonwealth's regimental combat teams, they were spread out over many worlds. Using his military background, Focht assigned troops to positions from which he could quickly reassemble his forces into larger functional units in time of need. Focht also added supplemental infantry, ground armor support, and aerospace fighters to the Star League battlemech forces. Extensive training was implemented, preparing troops for any contingency, including anti-mech combat and combat against static defenses. While the ComGuards spread through the inner sphere, ComStar needed to avoid being perceived as a threat. So, to maintain a neutral, pacifistic image, the ComGuards were often deployed in peaceful roles, like assisting in relief efforts, hostage rescues, and search missions. One of the most successful public relation moves was the ComStar's defense of the periphery against pirate raiders. Focht used his troops to defend several planets against raids and attacks by pirate kingdoms. But he never went out to search the bases of those raiders. This allowed the pirates to continuously exist and put a pressure on the sphere, while also be available as potential tools for ComStar's future use. At the same time, the ComGuards could present themselves as the defenders of the inner sphere and its people, beating back the pirates time and time again. The Hollywood image of a pristine white ComGuard mech repelling the raiders also served as an excellent recruitment tool for the Order. During the years of Primus Waterly's rule, ComStar had transformed from a communication and intelligence organization into a substantial military power. The expanded and trained ComGuards were now professionally led, their organization streamlined, they were stationed in the complete inner sphere, and their numbers had multiplied. While not strong enough to fight all the other states in the sphere, ComStar had become the single biggest military power. It was now ready to enforce the word of Blake and secure the future for the Blessed Order. And then, the August of the year 3049 came.